What is the bare minimum you need to sit down and play a game? Either video game, role-playing game. We could break it up into a different thing, like
Right.
a different category, so to speak.
Right.
But you posed this question,
Right.
and you asked the question. So do you have an answer for it?
I do. I do have an answer. I need a beverage. That's the single most important thing, because the minute I start talking, or especially talking, because my mouth gets dry, and then pretty soon I'm coughing, and
Yeah,
Other than that, I mean, that's really just what I need.
a beverage.
I need a beverage. Yeah, usually it's a beverage.
Mine doesn't matter if I'm playing a video game or tabletop or anything like that. Beverage is probably up there, but for me, it's always something to write on and something to write with.
Oh, yeah.
Even if I'm playing a video game, a lot of times I'll like take notes if I'm playing a game.
Oh, yeah, no, I hear you.
Like I have a notebook full of just like designs for Factorio and like ratio calculations.
I understand that.
Or like when I play like the adventure games, the old silver box, gold box, Dungeons and Dragons
Oh,
stuff.
gosh, yeah.
You have to write down what they told you because there's no journal.
No, no journal, no going back and reading it. You want a map? Well, you better draw that thing on a graph paper, boy. Otherwise, there is no mini map, no overworld maps.
Oh yeah, it's funny too because realistically, depending upon like even what role playing game you're playing, let's say,
Right.
you might want grid paper. If I'm playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons, give me the grid paper.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, everything's in square dimensions. I mean, you're talking 10 feet tall, a 20-foot hall. All right, now you know.
And it's also literally in inches. Like
Yeah.
it's measured in inches.
Yep.
It's super funny. Like, so yeah, that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Where are we starting?
Let's start with video games.
Yep.
So you sit down to play a video game. Let's say console. Let's start simple.
Okay.
Console. So what's the bare minimum you need for a console? It's a TV
Yep.
and an electrical outlet in your console.
Pretty much, yeah.
That is the bare minimum that you need.
Yeah, that brings me to that the meme was going around about a few years back, where what women think guys want. There's all these pictures of hot women on the wall and all this. What guys really want: a little tiny rocking chair in the middle of the room. The little what were those chairs back in the day? You sit on the floor. They were one piece.
Like the banana chairs?
Yeah, like the banana chair.
Yeah.
And a console and a TV. that the whole room was empty other than that.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what guys really need. They don't need anything else.
That's funny. And and I mean, like, realistically, think about, like, for my generation, when we had the consoles, we had, like, the N64, the GameCube, all that, when we were kids, right? And so, like, even the Wii was, like, I was still, quote-unquote, technically a kid when the Wii came out. And, like, yeah, we literally had the banana chairs, the rocking banana chairs. We had one controller for each sibling.
Yep.
And you had the TV, not the main TV usually. If you were lucky, you had your own TV off to the side so that when, dad was watching TV, you could play a game.
Exactly.
But that wasn't always the case. So now we get to like the question of like the bare minimum for comfort while playing.
Right.
And now we're getting into the idea of like, well, maybe you want like a table next to you.
Right.
Like an end table or a coffee table to set your drinks on that you gotta have, right? Or maybe your nachos or your chips or whatever
it is. Yep.
And like, well, now we have to also account for the nachos and the drinks and the lighting of the room and having a space dedicated to do it in. And a couch, maybe. The banana chairs are fun and all, but like...
but you know what? The older you get, the more that couch looks peasy.
Yeah, the couch is just great. Maybe even a recliner that you can just kind of like fall asleep with the gamepad on your lap.
Heck yeah. Been there.
And then a TV stand to lift your TV up because now you're higher up off the floor. And
Yep.
yeah, and it's kind of funny how that threshold begins to like slowly climb.
Right. Well, you start off with, I just want to do it I just want to do it, but enjoy it all. No matter how sucky I am at the game, I still want to just be comfortable. And I can just rely on that as my comfort and not the ability to play the game anymore. That's how I am now anyway.
It's funny because when I was a kid, it was like this was something new, something fresh, something to experience.
Right.
And now it's become like so integrated into our entertainment delivery system that like we have to have all the accoutrement with it or we can't even like enjoy it.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
Like I've seen so many gamers who sit down to play a gaming console and it's like, oh, the light's in my eye, or oh, like do you have something else I could sit on, or like,
right?
And it's like it's almost like we've become so pampered to having comfortability,
right?
While we're playing, like while we're entertained.
Yeah. Well, you know this is one of our kind of things that we talk about. Maybe not so much on the podcast, but we talk about it in the store here. Is it goes back to that marketing.
The advertising.
Well, the advertising. I mean, they know what people want, and say like I'm sitting around, and I've thought about this before too because I'm actually considering. I go from I went from the banana chair to the chair to the couch. Well, it was a recliner, then it was a couch, so my dog could be next to me. And then the cup holders and the stand next to you. To how can I do this all the time? I really like being comfortable. I really like having the dog or my wife or my daughter hanging out with me or my grandson hanging out with me. Well, how do we build the contraption that I can put my PC on with an arm that comes over in front of me on the couch and then I can fold it all up and shove it back into a corner when I'm done?
Yeah.
That's what we're coming to these days, and that's where I'm at. I'm at that point now. Do I even want a computer desk anymore? Like, it's just another thing to collect stuff.
So let's move into computers then. Let's just make that segue transition. Okay. So and then we'll digest that question.
Right.
So the question is, do I even want a computer desk?
Right.
So let's approach this now from the bottom up.
Yep.
What do you need to run a computer setup then? It's a little more complicated than a console. A console is basically the tower, and then rather than a mouse and keyboard, you just have this controller.
Right.
So, I mean, like, the number of peripheral things you need is more or less similar, but you're required to have a chair. You can't just sit cross-legged on the floor and play a computer. I mean,
it's not very
really
comfortable, though. It's pretty rough.
You need somewhere to put your arms.
You want to have bent over back syndrome when you get older.
And so now we have monitors and the cables go up, and then like you could use your TV, but then like the scaling is weird,
right?
And not to mention the individual components of like the bare minimum knowledge of how to just hook it all up,
right,
is also in there too. Like if we're gonna get really dense about this,
right,
rather than just color coded cables or now an HDMI that you just plug into the back of your TV,
right, you
got to look at the computer and kind of like decipher it. We take it for granted,
right,
that we just know how it do.
Right. Yeah. Well, because over the years we've been doing it.
Oh yeah.
It's just normal now.
It's knowledge that's just secondhand for us. But if you were to give someone a tower, a monitor, a mouse, and a keyboard, and be like, "All right, this is how you play a computer game," and they're like, "What? Like, where do I even start?" It's quite honestly, it's the equivalent of like looking at a car. If you don't know anything about cars, you're just like, "That's a thing."
Yeah. Okay.
Now that does a spinny.
Yeah. Yes. That does. That goes around and around.
Yeah.
Like the wheels on the bus.
And then am I missing anything on the bare minimum of a computer setup?
No. I mean, I think a lot of our listeners, and I know I did. I started out at a table for the most part. It was no computer desk. It was like, I got a computer. Oh, crap. Now what do I do?
Folding table.
I have no table. I have no chairs. Okay, well, grab a lawn chair. Grab a folding table. Throw it up in my room. Okay, this is okay for now. I can play like this for a week, 2 weeks, a year. Sooner or later, I want a little more.
Yeah.
Right? So then you buy the computer desk. You buy the computer chair. Get into all the fancy peripherals.
Yeah.
Now, modern day, I mean, I'd say modern day, I need my laptop at bare minimum.
Yep.
And then I still play with a mouse and keyboard, so
I do too. So
unfortunately, I have to have all those. And then headphones, because I don't. It's really hard to get across to a laptop that has a nice sound system that even remotely sounds good.
I suppose like, and that's becoming the like. We're getting into the non just necessities now, right? Because technically you don't need the headphones, but it's like.
No, but part of it is what as the evolution.
All right, so now let's talk about the computer desk. So I used to have the whole L.A.G.S wrap around with all the space I wanted, all the storage compartments. I literally just use like, I think my desk right now is like probably like 4 feet, maybe.
Okay.
I think 4 feet. It's like about a meter and a third for the EU listeners. Not even.
No.
It's big enough to put 2 monitors side by side on.
There you go.
That's it. And then it's deep enough that I could have my keyboard and a mouse and a little bit of room. If I push my keyboard all the way up to my monitors, I could fit like a plate down there and eat if I wanted. But I don't do that anymore. I just eat upstairs. I don't eat at my desk or anything.
Yeah, no, I don't eat at my desk either.
You spill ravioli or beefaroni and you ruin a keyboard once, you kind of learn.
It's a good experience, isn't it?
So I've heard.
So you know somebody that might have done that?
Maybe someone who might have done that with
Fair enough.
Keyboard they had just bought like a week prior.
Ouch. That even hurts worse when it's like, oh man, I love this keyboard. Oh.
Yeah. Yep. Not gonna name any names.
No, okay, we won't throw nobody under the bus there.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I start off with the biggest, baddest desk, have cupboards, have drawers, have full of everything. And now I was contemplating this yesterday when I was thinking about this subject, or 2 days ago when I started thinking about this subject. And I thought, do I even really need a computer desk? Like, all it does is collect stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from now on, I'm just going to go modular. Everything's going to be like, I can either sit at the couch, or I'll have like my computer chair and a spot that I can put my computer. I can roll it over there and put it there. Because I also like to, do other hobby stuff other than just computer stuff.
Yep.
And I always find that all this other hobby stuff gets in my desk. And all of a sudden now it's like, I don't have room for my computer. Like, I'm just like,
It's so the reason I intentionally got a small desk is because I know that if I pile crap up on it, I'm going to go to play a game and I'm be like, oh, this is in my way, and I get frustrated, but then I just clean the whole desk off.
Yeah.
And so it's like forcing yourself to have a constraint. And another benefit of this is I now have all my painting and my minis and all that on a different table. I just put a different table up.
Yeah, exactly.
I have my piano over here now.
Yeah. I just make everything nice and
the modular design of just a creative or entertainment thing. I redid a crafting room for a relative, and like one of the big things we wanted to do was the relative liked to sew and paint sometimes and do all these things, so we came up with this modular design was the idea. And that's like, I showed what was going on in my studio, so to speak, and I'm like, this is what's working for me, having this modular design, a place I can go to do this, a place I can go to do this, and it's not in the way. You're not trying to use one space for everything,
right?
And if you're lucky enough to have the space to do that, it's a no-brainer. Like, it's
I definitely have the space to do the whole setup thing here and here. Just at the point, I just didn't have the desire, but now I do. I'm just getting to that point where I just want to make everything easy.
And another one of the things I did too that was really nice is up above my monitors now I have shelving, like just plain flat shelving above my monitors. Well, this works great because now I can put my, like my audio interfaces and my extra equipment,
right?
And some of the weird like Funko Pop Mind Flayer or like just random stuff from minis I painted I could put up on there, and like now I have something nice to look at.
Yeah, you could have your decor that sets the tone and the mood for the gaming session.
And so I think to answer the question is like, I feel like there's a functional platform that you want to have the monitors on at the very least that you can sit at.
Yep.
But do you need a big desk?
No. You can get away with something pretty small. And
part of that too is like looking back to like how we started gaming. Like, if you think about it, when you start gaming, you don't have all the accessories and all the extra stuff. You have your drink that you had to have. Me, I had my piece of paper and pen.
Yep.
And then it just didn't really matter.
Right.
So, I guess that being said, let's... Before we go into role-playing games...
Yep.
I want to introduce a concept.
Okay.
And when we start talking about role-playing games, it's very, very prevalent in the role-playing game scene. Like, huge. It is honestly kind of a festering problem at this point. I think.
Festering problem.
I think it is a deep-seated issue.
Now I know what I'm doing for the next week, fixing festering problem.
I just think it's a deep-seated issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get into it. There might be a little bit of a hypocritical statement because I've been guilty of it myself, but
I mean, I'm sure we've all been guilty of it.
I'm trying to be cognizant of it.
Right.
So
okay.
I'm going to call it buying the experience.
Buying the experience.
Buying the experience. It's so you and I want to play a computer game. Well, do we need to have the RGB lighting on our cases?
No.
Do we need to have liquid cooling for our computers? No. Do we need to have a massive computer desk with the highest refresh rate monitor we can find in 4K Ultra HD?
Yes. No.
Or do we need to keep upgrading our computer all the time and keep up with the current things?
Right.
And so I'd like to pose this buying the experience problem.
Right.
And it's this idea that you have what you need to do what you want to do. Instruments, musicians, this is a huge thing in music, right?
Right.
And so, like, now that I'm, like, back into music again, I could see, like, there's so many people that are just trying to sell you gear to use to make your stuff better.
All right.
That you end up spending all of your time looking at and buying gear and learning how to use gear that ultimately you could have made an album by now.
Right.
Like, it's kind of this weird rabbit hole. And I found, now that we're going to segue into tabletop RPGs, that is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Like, the dice trays, the dice towers, like, don't get me wrong, it's cool to have them.
Right.
I have found one dice box that I roll my dice in.
Right.
And it's like basically one of the cheaper ones I found. It was like a Forgotten Realms. I can't remember what exactly it was. But that's the only dice tray I use.
Right.
Having dice trays is also handy. And you might have a differing opinion on this, right? Okay. Because it can increase engagement.
Right.
But I found that, like, with all the peripheries, and I'm not a mini user. I've always been a theater of the mind kind of guy, except for, like, a showpiece fight that's, like, maybe all my players want to do, right? And, like, at the end of the day, I found that you could spend all this time buying books, buying minis, buying things for D&D, and then you end up spending all your time researching, like, oh, someone's like, oh, this book actually wasn't that good. And you're like, oh, well, and then you got to go and, like, read it, and you end up getting in these, like, gear review or, like, peripheral review things, and it's this loop of, like, you never end up actually playing a game or doing the thing that you set out to do initially, because all of your time is invested in, like, defending the things that you've bought or trying to find new things to buy.
Right.
And so, like, I'd be very interested to get your perspective on this as a store owner versus a gamer. Right.
Well, I mean, that is, as a store owner, that is your job. Sell the experience, right?
Yeah.
And part of the experience is, sell them dice, sell them dice trays, dice towers, sell them the newest books, sell them the play mats.
Yeah.
I mean, who needs a play mat, like, really? For D&D, you don't need a play mat. You don't need a play mat for any game, actually.
So
they're nice to have,
yeah,
but you don't need them.
And ultimately, like, this is that discussion we're having, right? It's like, yeah, you don't need it, but, like, the play mat for Magic and the sleeves for Magic, I could not sit down and play Magic without a play mat or sleeves now. Right. I am so used to it that I just couldn't do it.
Right, and that's part of that whole gear thing. Yeah. When you started Magic, I bet. In fact, when I started Magic, which was only 10 years ago, well, 11 years ago now, playmats and sleeves were just really starting to hit the market. I know the gamer Joe, one of your buddies that you go fishing with, him and his family. I mean, they talked about he still plays Magic with cards that are the old, like, first, second, third edition cards, just as is.
Yep.
They don't care.
Yep.
It's like it's not
a game. Like,
and that's how most people have viewed it for a long time.
Yep.
And the same thing with D&D and some of the tabletop. I mean, that was the most flashy thing in D&D when I started playing, was just getting a book. I mean, there was character sheets, but you didn't dare use them because you spent $20 on buying 10 character sheets in a book.
Right?
You didn't want to pull them out because, like, then you only had 9 and then you only had 8.
And at the end of the day, your character's already on notebook paper anyways.
Right. Yeah. So
right?
It's like, but it's part of the selling experience. And there is something to be said for that. You know, it gives people ownership in what they're doing. I think for me, that's the only reason I would even try to sell something to somebody, is like, if they commit to say, we'll use the game Lancer, because I think we brought that up once already in our conversation today. But I know the guys are like, well, we want to play Lancer. Well, they only need one book for the whole Lancer group.
Yeah.
Because there's like an app or something that takes care of all the interaction for the DM and the characters.
Okay.
The DM can, send levels to them and send this, or not level, whatever they call their levels. And it's just all pretty seamless. But without the ownership of that, like there's no ownership. So everybody's like, well, we don't have real character sheets. So, well, I want minis, because then I have something on the table in front of me, right? And then they have their dice, of course.
Yep.
They're looking for ways to have more ownership into the game. And I think when you're selling stuff, like, as a store owner for that stuff, that's kind of at least that's what I'm doing it for.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily doing it so, somebody has a terrible dice collecting problem. They need that new set of dice. I mean, sure, there are those customers that's what they want. That's what I'll do it for. But for the most part, most players, I just want to have ownership in the game, so they take it a little more serious.
Yeah. And so I think the clear answer that kind of emerges out of this is, like, I don't think the peripheries are, like, I noticed with, like, I will state with the initial statement I made, I framed it as, like, this is a bad thing.
Right.
But you're taking the other side route.
Well,
right?
I'm the store owner. I want to make money with it, right?
And, like, I feel like the answer lies somewhere in the middle. It's like, and I think a lot of it has to do with, like, for Magic, for example.
Right.
I had a lot of expensive cards. I wanted to take care of my collection, right? This is something that I had a vested interest in.
Yep.
And so I wouldn't necessarily, I went through a lot of different kinds of sleeves.
Right.
And I found what I liked. I like matte sleeves with a matte finish on the front, matte finish on the back.
Yep.
Because they're not going to slip out of my hands. I don't like graphics printed on them.
They ain't going to scuff up and be all, like,
it's not
can't
gonna
see
scuff up.
anything.
Exactly. Yep. So, like, I had a very practical solution. So I did end up using the sleeves, using the deck boxes. God, I went through how many different styles of deck boxes, and finally one has emerged that was good. We're not sponsored. I'm not going to say their name.
Right.
Whatever. If you make it a good deck box and I'm using it, hit me up. Anyways,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Playmats, another great example.
Yeah.
I have several playmats, but I actually sold a bunch of them and got rid of a bunch of them. I have like 3 I use now.
Right.
And I only have 3 because sorry, 4. I have 4. Because if I sit down to play and 3 other people don't have them, I can have 1 for myself and 3 for each of them. Like,
yeah.
It's just it's one of those things that it's kind of like the self-help book problem in a way of, like, if all you do is spend time reading your self-help books but never help yourself,
Right.
You're just feeding the machine, right?
Right.
But if you do buy the products and you use them and they're very handy and they give you more agency in the game, or not agency, but interaction with the game,
right,
or investment into the game, by all means, I feel like that's the answer, right? It's like, it's that blend.
Yeah, no, I can't argue at all. I'm a hypocrite. I'll sell all this stuff. I use very little of it. I mean, I understand it. I'm from the 4x6 index card days. So that's I literally need, when I'm going to a tabletop RPG and someone says that I need a 12-piece character sheet and I need this and I need, this, I'm like, is this something for me? Like, do I really want to get involved in this? Like, I just can I put it on an index card and then I set a dice? Like, I like dice, so I have a few sets. But most of my dice that I actually have that I use are dice that I've used since I was my pre-teens. They're just old dice. My orange dice are like 30 plus years old. I still use them.
One of the hilarious things, I referenced this game quite a bit, but I feel like it really did kind of like, it did a decent job of kind of breaking the mold of how we do things at the shop. Blades in the Dark is kind of an anomaly for the games around here.
Right.
No one brings their own dice to that game. All of the players in that group, well, not all of them, 3 of the players in that group, you could label as dice goblins.
Yeah.
None of them use their own dice.
Well, whose dice do they use?
They use the community brick that sits on the table. That is the dice they use.
Nice.
The dice that just sit in the shop on the table, the little 36,
right?
The 6x6 cube of dice, or 9 by 5.
Yeah,
9 by 4.
36 dice anyway in there. So
yeah, so 9 by 4. Sorry.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember how high it was stacked.
Yep. Well, it's deceptive.
Yeah.
There we go.
But that's what they use. They literally use. And how many of those players do you know have?
Oh yeah.
Obscene collections of dice.
Yeah.
But they use those.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
And it's hilarious, like that emerged out of that.
Right.
And I don't know. And it's like the computer. I use the computer in that game. I don't normally use computers in games.
Right.
But all I use the computer for is to play ambient background music.
There you go.
Because that game is all about mood and theme.
Right. That works out pretty good then.
And I don't normally play music during games. So it's just super weird, like how that game lended itself, because it was a narrative game, to just like the players investing more in the story and the setting than I don't think anybody has a mini for it even, which, it doesn't use minis.
Right.
But it's just very interesting to me that way. And the character sheets, I printed out, I hand them out to people, and I hang on to them as the DM.
Nice.
It's just one of those things. It's like, that's what I guess I frame that because that's the extreme end, right?
Right.
That's the extreme end of like limited of what you need to play. And then we can talk about a game that has a lot of peripherals.
Yes.
Can you think of what I'm talking about?
Yeah, 5th Ed.
5th edition.
5th edition. Well, pretty much any version of D&D. I mean, 5th Ed is really the one that exploded it because of the small thing, video streamers and
yeah.
I mean, but the big thing was, I think 5th Ed is one of those RPGs that really still want to separate the DM from the players. I think you immediately create, and I don't know if it's by design or whatever, but you immediately create this wall GM screen, right?
Yeah.
Almost every GM wants one, because back in the day, D&D with a lot of tables. Like, you rolled on tables for everything. It's getting to be less and less, and now most of them are just, like, charts to tell you stuff. Not so much tables anymore. So you start with that, and then, of course, you have your dice towers. So, because I know in a lot of gaming groups, ours is not too bad, but I know in a lot of gaming groups, and over the years we've had this happen, where players just want to have that competitive edge. So instead of just rolling their dice like a normal human, they try to skew the results by rolling the dice in certain ways or picking them up right away.
Yeah.
And, with the function of the dice tower and even the dice tray, that almost takes away that completely, because it's hard to reach in and grab something out of a dice tray really quick, or off a dice tower inside of like the hole, the where the catches the dice. It keeps people from just picking up their dice. Yeah, I rolled 20.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a prevalent thing, but it's just little things that build on each other over time. And then, of course, marketing. Hey, what's better than the dice coming out of the dragon's mouth or down the wizard's tower? That's so cool, and all the sound effects you can make with it. Like, I'm all for it. There's always a time and place for everything. And if it's me coming into a game, if I can have a pen and paper, I'm okay for the most part, and a little bit of dice if I need them. Although there's a time where I just want a game, and I want to be a DM, and I want the full plethora of experience. I want the lighted table. I want the sound effects in the background, because that can be exciting. I mean, I run a game, at different times to where I had the sound effects. You know, when you come into a city, you have the noise in the background. You turn it up a little bit so the players are like, they have to talk over a little bit to hear each other. And it's just kind of, especially if they're really getting into it. And you can dim the lights in the room. And I don't know, it's not needed. It is something that we do though.
And so I think for me, where the break point emerges in like the extras versus the bare necessities,
right,
is if I'm kind of, so like in a narrative game,
right,
like in Blades, or kind of how I ran Stars Without Number,
right,
where like it's player driven to a certain extent. It's not me planning things out.
right.
Usually, like there's some planning, but most of it is just the drive from the players.
Right.
What are the players wanting to engage with? Stuff like that. I have found that the peripheries and the extras slow the game down, because if I don't know what the players are going to encounter, what's going on, I can't plan for having these monster tokens set out or
right.
this thing set up.
Right.
And so I think if you're going to use the extras, it's almost necessary for you to almost overplan.
Oh yeah.
Like you like have to have everything like in your head planned out beforehand and set aside. Cause like, I mean, you and I have played in or ran games where like you're going and you're trying to like grab tokens, or like you're trying to grab the minis and you're like, oh, I didn't have all the minis set out beforehand. And then now it's like you have this lull in the action because you're like, roll initiative. And you're like, wait, but now everyone hold on and suspend disbelief for freaking 10 minutes while I get everything set up.
It's definitely a skill to have everything working the way you want to, and at the ease of just continuing without losing momentum.
Yeah, and that's where I think to me, that's the breaking point, is like basically where the extras, if you're taking time to, if you don't plan for the extras,
right,
and you're just buying all these extra things to use in your game, and then like your game isn't like designed to have these things integrated into them,
right,
it can just slow everything down.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's why like if I take notes in a certain way, if I have a certain notebook, I don't change notebooks or try not to change notebooks, because like that's extra time I have to spend now to convert everything over to the next notebook or to the new note system, whatever, as a DM.
Yeah. No, I can't argue that one. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I guess a lot of it for me now has a lot to do with the group. If I'm in a group that's willing to go down the experience, or they just want the low and dirty of it all.
And again, like I think the game, like what you're doing, has a lot to do with it. Like I think there's so much to that. Like if you take an objective look at D&D, D&D does lend itself well because they're leaning towards the miniatures and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I think for that specifically, you can have a narrative of D&D. You can narratively play it. It's the system is not necessarily meant for that though. Mm-hmm. Like it was never designed around the narrative play. It was designed around charts and tables. Like that basic D&D was like, if you didn't have 1,000 charts, how to roll the weather of the day, the everything, the diseases you got, just everything, the treasure, everything. Yep. It was just, people would have been lost. Of course, it goes back to that other podcast we did about the first role. I think we did a podcast on the first role playing and how they became. Like D&D was literally a side effect of, in fact, all modern day role playing comes from modern day mini wargaming.
Yeah, so like Dungeons and Dragons was made by
like mini wargaming
Gygax and Arneson, based on the fantasy medieval war game they made called Chainmail.
Right.
And it's like, but what if we're just playing one of these guys on the battlefield rather than
it's crazy. And then there was other people that were into other stuff that kind of slid in there and helped make. But anyway, that's a whole other podcast. Maybe we did do a podcast on that.
Maybe we should
do a deep dive on that someday, because that's
it's an interesting.
I watched some really good like lore on that. It was really cool. But I mean, there's a lot of places you can go with that, and So we've covered video games. We've covered
consoles and D&D.
A little bit of TCG. We haven't really delved that much
and we
into
did
it.
pose the question of like the buying the experience, which I feel like is something that's coming up more and more. I'm beginning to realize,
right?
Like especially like in where we live, like the consume thing,
right,
is insane.
Yeah, well, that's society is getting to be that way in whole. Everything is about consuming stuff and then moving on.
Yeah, and like, and again, like I've been prefacing, like I only reason I bring it up is because I noticed, like, for a long time I've been doing that. You know.
Oh yeah, no, like, we all do it to some extent, to something.
Yeah.
With whether it's some people it's fashion, some people it's video games, some people it's hunting equipment, sporting equipment. I mean, it's just
there's a million
hockey. Like you really need
and
every hockey stick
the
ever
place
made.
I first heard about this, like, kind of synthesized down, boiled down, if you will, into like clear communicated words, was the like, I'm gonna do a lot more running this year, right?
Right.
So then you research running shoes and you buy running shoes and then you buy a watch, and then you buy like ear pods to listen to music while you run. And at the end of the day, all you had to do was go outside and run.
Right.
And next thing you know, it's April. You're waiting for all your equipment to come in and you haven't run at all.
Yeah.
And it's like...
yeah, because your shoes were on back order, or your earbuds are on back order.
And it's this idea of like waiting to have the stuff to do the thing.
Right.
So I think that was my fundamental thing about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to look at it for sure.
Yeah. So anyways, so TCG.
Yep.
So this is an interesting one to me because I've been on I started as a casual Magic player, and that's kind of where I'm like leaning now again.
Right.
But for a long time I was a tournament player, and so I had like 4 play sets of every card, of,
right?
Like all this and that.
That way you could make any deck you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yep.
And rather than just like pick a deck and play it, I wanted to play all the decks, right? So
right.
I'd buy the staples, I'd buy the Path to Exiles, the Vendilion Clicks for Magic, all that sort of thing. And like, from a TCG standpoint, from like a store owner, how do you encourage the buying the experience for Magic? Like, what?
I actually don't sell that experience very hard. I could, and I probably should, because there's a lot of money to be made there. The only thing that I try to sell is sleeves and playmats. And to every new player, that is the immediate, oh, you're just trying to upsell me. No, actually, I'm not. Because if you don't have a good playmat to where you can pick your cards off a table, God forbid you have a table that has a lip on it when you're playing a TCG and you don't have a playmat, because you're going to have a hell of a time getting that card off that table.
Yeah.
You really are. You can't just slide it off then. Then you have to actually grind your fingers into it. And, potentially you're ruining your card, whatever. So the playmat's nice for that purpose. The playmat also gives you your playable area where your card should stay. Mm-hmm. The playmat is generally big enough to hold all your cards, and you can set. It's the most efficient way of organizing people at a table.
Yeah, it defines your area.
It defines your play area. And so at a little 4x6 white folding table, you can literally have 4 players. Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't have that and you're just open like a RPG, like D&D, you're not going to, there's no way. It's too much, because everybody's got their dice towers, their cups, all that. Magic players, it's just that, or Pokemon players, it makes no difference, all the same thing. It's that little 24-inch mat.
We played D&D for a long time. I had a school desk.
Yep.
Like there's a tiny school desk.
That would be an ideal way of doing it.
That was my DM's area, and I sat away from the guys who sat 5 of them around a coffee table. And they had a dice tray in the middle of the coffee table to roll their dice.
Right.
That is how we played D&D for years.
Yeah. Yeah, the DM was separate from the players.
But the amount of space we needed, like, it was just coffee. It was like kitchen table D&D, right? Like, it's like kitchen table Magic, or that's effectively what we did. We just did it in a way that you could just do it in someone's living room.
Right.
And yeah, taking that forward is so, it's always been just very hard for me. I guess I went back to tabletop RPGs again.
Well, I mean,
I know we're on TCGs.
You like tabletop RPGs. That's okay.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, but with Magic, it's always been like, we want the folding table, we want the play mats, we want this and that, because creating that clearly defined zones was so important.
That is important. For efficiency purposes, you need that.
So the other thing I want to talk about, and this...
Well, I do want to, before we go on that, I do want to talk about the sleeves.
Okay.
Because this is from a store and a user standpoint. At first, I was resistant to sleeves too, right? Until an almost horrible accident one day, where a guy spilled a cup of coffee on the table, and almost ruined hundreds of dollars worth of cards. You know, when you invest in a game, say even it's D&D or Magic or any of these games, but you invest in those, the sleeve is the single cheapest way to protect your investment.
Yeah.
Even if you only open a pack and you still got the $100, it's still a $100 card. There's still actual value to that card.
Yeah.
You can go to a game store, trade that card in for something else tangible. So, sleeves, and you just have to, them are the two things you have to have.
It's like putting your money in a wallet.
You don't need to have a tube for your playmat. You don't need to have a deck box. I mean, it's ideal to have a deck box, and you should.
Well, and
but you don't need
the deck box is definitely an argument like the sleeve. It protects the investment from like getting crunched up. If you have all your cards
sliding
in your
into the backseat of your car and all over your floor. Yeah.
But in TCGs specifically, because I don't want to get sidetracked again.
Yep.
So this is probably will be a little bit of friction, and I'm probably going to get slapped by Wizards for saying this. I do not like booster packs.
Right.
The only time I will ever do booster packs now is if I am getting 3 of them for a draft.
Right.
That is it. I think the chase and that whole basically loot box idea of the booster packs, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Like, I despise it. If you just sold single cards, I'd be so much happier. And that's why when I play Magic now, I just buy single cards unless I'm drafting. And I know as a store owner, the packs are good money. So, like, where's the line drawn?
I have a couple ideas. I have a couple theories in this, because this is something I have thought about a lot. I sell a lot of singles, so I make money off that too. But I think part of the booster pack experience is, one, you're opening something. People love that experience. But 2, the more important part, and why I think they've continued doing it, other than the fact that it's a collectible game. So you need cards that aren't as valuable compared to cards that are valuable to make it collectible. Otherwise, it would be
an artificial market, right?
You need to do this. But one of the, in my humble opinion, why I like booster packs, other than making money off them, is that it goes with the draft. It's hand in hand with the draft, obviously. But if a new guy comes in and wants to play Magic and he has no idea what he's doing, I play a game of Pack Wars with him. We play Pack Wars. That's just a simple way of playing Magic. But he buys a pack, he opens it up. None of these cards make any sense to him. You know, I don't know how to play this game. I don't know what to do. If you don't have a booster pack and you say, well, here, buy these cards, and then we will build a deck off those cards. Maybe you know, it's the influence of whoever's teaching him is what he's going to play now.
Yeah.
So, like, if I'm a mono green player, I could influence people all day on mono green. It's cheap, it's easy, not hard to learn, hard to master, but not hard to learn, right? Just like all the colors are pretty easy to learn, but they're hard to master. But if he opens a booster pack and opens 6 booster packs and gets he might be tempted to try 2 or 3 colors at a time, because that's what he got cards for. And so I like that idea. It lets people, especially on a budget and ones that don't spend tons of money on it, just play with what they got. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that whole, for the more experienced player, yeah, obviously buying boosters is just useless for you guys. Like, it doesn't make any sense, because lots of times, even lots of the guys that come in here that do still buy boosters, they come in, open it up a few boosters, and like, okay, I want 8 cards. The rest of them, here you go, have them. I don't want them. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally, yeah.
Like, we had a guy even that comes to the drafts from out of town. He's been here for a few months now. He comes in, pays his money for the drafts, looks at his cards, gives them all away before he leaves. Because he's like, I don't need them.
Yeah.
I'm here for the fun.
Yeah.
He was here for the 3 hours of playing.
The experience of that.
So, I don't know. Wizards, I understand. I don't like how they're trying to go down the sports card arena where they're going to have the autograph card. Wizard hasn't done the autograph cards yet, but they have all the chase cards, all the
Well, that's the thing. Is like
the collector's boosters.
They're creating the artificial bloat
it's just
of rarity, and it's funny because some of those what do they call it? Not masterpieces, but like you know what I'm talking about, like the
showcase,
premier card showcase. Okay,
yep,
are cheaper than the actual
it's
normal versions.
I think Wizards and Pokemon hasn't hit it yet, but I see them. They're going that way. I think they're gonna get to that way of the '80s, '90s sports card trade did. They're putting out so much stuff, so hard, and so many varieties. Sooner or later, people are gonna be like, "I'm just done." You've saturated the market so bad.
Well, the thing is
we don't care anymore.
They learned, and again, maybe this is like the culmination of all of this. Is like the whale is willing to pay.
Yeah.
There's someone out there that wants to pay all the money to have all the things, and guess what? They're worth more to the company that's selling than 20 people buying cards sustainably. But the trouble is it's a short-term thing.
Right.
Because in the very long term, the players that lose out because fear of missing out or all these other things, the players that end up leaving because there's so much saturation.
Right.
Eventually the whales aren't going to have anybody to play the game with. Like, the game's going to be dead.
Right.
Well, and anyway. This is like a doom and gloom, but like, it's you're sacrificing long-term stability for short-term gain.
Right. So we've kind of got off topic a little. Oh, a lot. We just jumped right off that rail.
Yeah.
So let's get back on that rail.
Okay.
What we're bringing stuff to TCGs. We're coming to a tournament. What do you bring?
Again, for me, notepad.
Notepad. Yep.
I
playmat.
So for me, for a TCG, it would be a playmat, a notepad, and
applicable cards if we were playing
deck
Commander
plus deck blocks,
or we're buying a draft, right?
Okay, that's it.
I know. There's a lot of people that.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. There's a lot of people that have been. There's so many scales to this because the marketing world is absolutely wonderful when it comes to this. You get your playmat, right? It would be dumb not to have a playmat. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to preach this over and over and over. Man, that's why I have playmats in the store, just for people to play. And sooner or later, we just talk them into buying their own because they need a playmat, man. Playmat, but I also noticed that, deck boxes and stuff. And now you start to see everything from small bags that hold just a playmat and a deck box to giant backpack pulling luggage bags that can hold 30 playmats, 30 decks, all that extra stuff you want, it's like, holy crud. It's out of control. That part's out of control. I get it. I'm a store owner, but on the other hand, I don't promote most of it, so I probably should, though. Let's be honest. These young guys with lots of money. I mean, they want to buy stuff.
The other one, too, is like, this one's always funny to me. The life counter problem. Yeah. People love their life counters.
Yeah.
Love them.
Yeah.
I guess I do bring 6-sided dice to Magic tournaments.
Yeah, for
counters.
Counters, yep.
But like spin downs, I don't use them. I use paper for my life because at the end of the day, I don't know if I'm going to be at more than 20 life. Odds are probably in a lot of the formats I played.
Right.
Life fluctuates so much that to just show up with a 20-sided dice.
They do have fancy ones that have little spin
right,
life
and guess what? They go to 40.
99. You can get the ones that go to 99.
Okay, that's fair.
But they were expensive as crap when they came out. They only came out in special editions too.
I think D&D did a version of that in the Waterdeep Dragon Heist dice set.
I think so too.
I used that one quite a bit.
Yeah.
I didn't mind that one. That one was okay. But if it doesn't go above 40, Commander, right? You start at 40. And at that point, you already need 2 spin downs. And you're like, come on, like,
Right.
or your fancy like pewter casted
Heck yeah.
ones they're super cool looking. Like, I
But
love having a
almost
dragon sitting on the
useless
table.
as far as Magic goes.
But like you're playing a commander that like you gain life or something, and all of a sudden now it's like, oh well, now you gotta have this ugly dice next to it to signify what you're actually at.
Right. It's crazy how quick it is to get off on the tangent of adding more than is not needed. You know, it goes back to that. Do we really need it? Now, I have found that, man, it's weird because I'm in a different mindset than, well, one, I sell some of the stuff, but I'm getting older. Sometimes it's nice to have those little luxuries. But then again, I don't want to overdo it because I don't want to carry it all home. Thankfully, I have a store I can just leave everything on a counter and come back and take care of it the next day, you know. But, you know, I know that you get some of those guys still bringing in backpacks full of stuff. It's just like, holy crud. Like, what is going on here? Yep. You don't need a backpack. When all it comes down to is a pen and paper. Yep. Like, that's what you really need. Let's be honest.
It's so funny, too, like, in the TCG realm specifically. Like, I don't know why I have such, like, I don't know what to, like, it's just a raw fascination full of hatred for life counters. Like, I could go on for hours about how much I despise them, like how much I hate them.
I've found a use for them in a lot of things more than I have in Magic.
Oh, like, yeah, like
I use them as life counters for like monsters or like low end campaigns. They're an absolute easy way for me to keep track of goblin hit points. Like, you can put 20 goblins on the table. You have then if you find a goblin with more than 20 hit points, you're doing something wrong. And you have life counters marking which one are getting whacked, you know?
I keep all the 20 setters I had for Magic, the spin downs, I use for Warhammer now, for tank hit points.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You set it on top of the tank.
Mini war games, yep. We never even got into mini war games. So.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. But it's just funny to me. Like, I'm so fascinated with this. I have to, like, just. You can't bump a table and lose your life total with a piece of paper.
No.
Like,
no, that's true.
There's just I don't get it. Or the phone one. Actually, the phone ones aren't bad.
Them aren't too bad. Yep.
Those ones are okay because it has the same functional purpose as like paper. Of like you can't bump it. It goes up as high as you want it to go. Yep. Like it has all the features you need.
Yep.
So I'm cool with that. Anyways, anything else?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to save the mini war games till last because it's the one that requires the most.
Yeah.
You can't show up to a mini war game without carrying a tote. It's almost impossible.
So I guess we'll ask the question: what's the bare minimum?
Yeah, I mean, what's the bare minimum that you need for a Warhammer game? A Warhammer 40K. I'm only using Warhammer 40K because it is the standard of mini war games. Everybody knows it. I won't say that it's the most played one now because there's definitely other games that could be easier and more popular as far as lore goes because a lot of people love, say, Legion and stuff like that.
So I'll answer this with a two-parter.
Yep.
Okay. So in a traditional grand battle game,
right,
which is 40K.
Yep.
For mini war games, you need bare minimum. Let's say you're running like custodes, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna need like 40 to 50 models minimum.
Right.
I think is about where they're at, something like that. Now, if you're playing the same amount of points in AdMech, you're gonna need a lot of dudes.
What about Imperial Guard?
Honestly, you can run Imperial Guard armies with not that many dudes.
Oh.
Because you can go tank battalions and stuff. So the number fluctuates between what you're trying to do.
Fair enough.
But AdMech is one of those, like, the point cost for all the models is, like, been lowered and lowered and lowered. And so it's created this, basically made a horde army out of AdMech.
Oh, jeez.
But Tyranids is another great example.
Yeah, Tyranids, yeah. That would be a good
one you just need a ton of models for, right? To even just field an army. But, so at the end of the day, you're fielding a lot of people, and you need something to carry them so that they're not going to get broke, because if you've ever messed with a mini, you know that if you sneeze on them wrong, they explode.
Right.
Especially if they're resin.
Yeah.
God. And then now, like, painted, unpainted, right?
Right.
Like, because you can't just show up with a gray plastic art. I mean, you can. Like,
you can, yeah.
If the limiting factor for you playing 40K is showing up with a gray army. Play the gray army. Like, I'd rather you show up and play with a non-painted army than not show up.
Right.
Anyways, sorry, little aside there. It's crazy because you can just like look at this and it's like turtles all the way down, and like the bare minimum is you need you need all the modeling stuff.
Yep.
To just assemble the pieces.
Yeah, it's
so
a lot.
That's glue, cutters, product. That's basically it to assemble it. Okay. Yep. Then you need dice, rule books. Okay, that covers that section. Maybe templates.
Yep.
So we'll say like the actual rules stuff and the calculation.
Probably
stuff.
Tape measure.
Tape measure is an absolute necessity.
I know exactly how far
you could do the little whippy sticks, but I mean that's effectively a tape measure.
Yeah.
Then you need a table to play on.
It's got to be big enough too.
And it's got to be 4x6 roughly.
Yeah. It's got to be a pretty good sized table.
And then you need some sort of objects to place on the table to signify blocking line of sight. I hesitate to say terrain because I'm pretty sure I've seen water bottles be used as
it's imaginary terrain.
It functionally doesn't matter. Like that's the extra part, right? So already we're at like a list of almost 10 items to just play a game.
Right. That's just to play it. Yeah.
And then the other thing too is not only do you need these things, you need them in volume. You can't just have one 6-sided dice.
No.
You're gonna want at least a cube of 36.
Yeah, 36. Yep.
Minimum.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
And people wonder why like it gets so expensive so quick, and it's not sustainable.
Well, it's definitely not. It's not something that it should not be your first. It shouldn't be your first delve into the gaming world as far as like tabletop gaming of any kind. You should probably experience that at a smaller scale. There's other games. There's plenty of games out there you can play that are mini war games that aren't what we're talking about. We're using Warhammer because it is kind of the standard.
And so this is that distinction I wanted to make. So in mini wargaming, you have grand battle games.
Yep.
I feel like Legion could be in that. You also have 40K. You have Bolt Action, Flames of War. There's tons of them.
Yeah.
Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Age of Sigmar. You have all these different ones.
What was the big competitive one?
War Machine?
War Machine. There you go.
War Hordes, because it was Hordes and War Machine.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
You also have the Mantic games.
Yeah.
Kings of War, stuff like that. Anyways, those are your grand battles. Those are lots of minis on a big battlefield, right? The real way to get into mini wargaming, in my opinion, is skirmish games.
Yep.
Gaslands is a great example.
Yeah.
Like, so this is a mini war game, but what do you need to play Gaslands? Or what do you need to play a skirmish game?
Bare minimum, you need 2 Hot Wheel cars each. That's the bare minimum.
And the rule book, right?
Technically, you can print out the free rules offline. You can play it like that. The rest is just extra, honestly, because you can print out the free rules, the actual step-by-step rules. You can print those out. You can print the templates out. So you need printer paper because you got to print the templates out. And 2 Hot Wheel Matchbox cars.
And then some dice
per person. Basic 6-siders.
Okay.
Because if you read the Get Started on their website, they just tell you, okay, this number and this number are this number and this number are this number and this number are that. So on the 1 through 6. Mm-hmm. So you just need 6-siders. Print out your little bit that you have from the starter stuff online. Now, the starter stuff is only going to give you a taste. It's not going to give. It's the bare minimum, and then 2 Hot Wheel Matchbox cars per person.
Yeah, I mean
that's literally the end of it.
So we're at a list of 3-4 things, maybe.
Yeah,
as opposed to 10, and you don't need these in volume either.
No, one person can literally bring dice. Go to your local game store. They should probably have dice and templates on hand, just to try.
And one of the ones I like for the skirmish games too is Frostgrave. We've talked about it a little bit.
Yep.
You need a 20-sided dice. You need some of those random D&D minis you have laying around. Yep. You do need a few of them, like quite a few of them.
It's like 9, 10, something like that.
Somewhere in there, yeah. And then just some random odds and ends. But the nice thing about that one is like usually if you want to get into it and you're already gaming, like you kind of have that stuff.
Right.
So you don't really need to go out and spend it. Even if you do go out and buy brand new all of it, it's probably like less than $100.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Those skirmish games are.
Or
definitely
another
cheaper.
one I always liked was the Warhammer Underworlds.
Okay.
Or Necromunda. Necromunda's a weird one because you want really good terrain. Like the terrain is what makes that game. But Underworlds is just Shadespire, stuff like that.
Okay.
It's snap together minis, so you don't
Right.
even need glue. All you have to do is cut them out of the sprue, and then it's a deck of cards and some dice.
Right.
And
It's
then
pretty handy.
it's all self-contained. But yeah, I mean, and the extreme end of wargaming is, I mean, oh god, just Google Warhammer 40K Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Look at the images and just realize how much money is on those tables. Like how much money in plastic is on those tables. That is the extreme end.
That's ridiculous, by the way. There was just, yeah.
But to be fair, a lot of those guys have been collecting for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not usually a 20-year-old kid that has
No.
300,000 points.
No, it's a 40,
These are like 40, 50,
50-year-old.
60-year-old guys that have been collecting since the game started.
Yeah.
Buying collections off people that don't want to play anymore.
Yep. So, I mean, like, that's the extreme end, right?
Yeah.
Like, and some people, that's their enjoyment of it, and that's cool.
Well, it's like the guy. I know you've heard of him. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head. The guy who's been playing D&D for, I think he said since it came out, basically, and they've been playing on and off, or not on and off. They've been playing consistently every week for pretty much his whole life. All of his kids have grown up playing through it. His daughter now runs some of the campaigns. He has a table, but he has a whole basement of his house, and I think he said he had somewhere around 40,000 custom-made minis that he's made himself over the years for this game.
Was this guy on, like, a YouTube feature?
Yeah, he was. He's also been on some of the talk shows.
Like, Curious Archive, was it?
I can't remember the name of it, but
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
that's
And his whole basement's like just a whole.
it's just a basic game room now.
That's
Yeah,
so
and he's
cool.
had players come and go, and some of his players have died over the years.
Yeah.
'Cause just people die, right? And he has like little memorials on the table now
Yeah.
in the game, and terrain pieces made for that. So when they go back to the spot, they can set it all back up, and it's like, holy smokes.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, so maybe the ultimate takeaway of this is like we were talking about that middle ground, right?
Yeah.
And it's like if the investment brings you joy and it adds to your game,
Right.
it's worth it.
Yeah.
But if you're spending all of your time thinking that you need these things
Right.
to enjoy what you're doing, that's the wrong route to go down. Because if you don't let the cost prohibit you from playing.
Right. No, just get out and play, man.
Yeah.
Bottom line is just play, and then figure the rest out later.
I've pitched this to many people over the years. As soon as we learned that it was working really well, if you want to get into like Warhammer 40K,
Yep.
try it on Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah.
There are amazing mod packs out there to just play the game and see if you like it. I've heard people be like, "I want to buy this army." I'm like, "Cool, play a game with them on Tabletop Simulator." That's a $20 investment.
Right.
If you like the army and you like playing the game, then maybe think about spending the $2,000 to play it.
Ouch. Oh,
Because I have seen way too many people over the years spend money and buy an army and
Yeah.
never play it.
yeah. Well, that's just the nature of the beast there.
Yeah. So
I don't think you've ever done that yourself, though, have you?
I've played every army I've ever bought, but a lot of them I bought to paint
Right.
and
Well,
then
yeah.
sold them.
Yeah.
So. But yeah,
Alrighty. So I think that kind of caps off what we're talking about today.
that was a long one. Gosh.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you got long ones.
Well, I got sidetracked hard, but.
Yeah, it happens too.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see you guys in the next one.
Till next time.